So number 9, Maw'idhatu Sijni, is a nice long chapter. If you want to have some extra motivation, inshallah, it's useful for you to read the Surah Yusuf in conjunction with the story. It's the same story, but we'll follow the same sequence, inshallah. Now. Now. It was like I have to check the tafsir, something about the baby comes to mind now. Let's check the tafsir again about it, inshallah. Okay, so bismillah, can take out your masahif, your mushafs, your Qur'ans onto Surah A'la. Okay, bismillah, inshallah. What we can do, inshallah, let's recite the surah together. Inshallah ta'ala. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. So again, the encouragement is to read this surah in your salah, inshallah. You have memorize now, or revise it and read in your salah, inshallah. Sa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Surah Al-A'la. Sabbih isma rabbika al-a'la. Sabbih, amr on the second bab. Sabbih, you Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sabbih, declare the perfection of Allah Ta'ala, declare that He is free from all shortcomings, that He has any deficiencies. Declare what? That perfection and exaltation to who? To Isma Rabbika, to the name of your Lord, the Lord of you Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Al-A'la, the one that is transcendent, most high, most lofty. We spoke a bit about that verse last week, inshallah ta'ala, and we do this in salah quite a number of times. We would say Subhana Rabbil Azim and Subhana Rabbil A'la in our salah daily. So we actually carry this out to declare Allah's perfection. Obviously, we also say Subhana Rabbil A'la when we are at the lowest point, when we're in sujood. We declare the elevation and the transcendence of Allah Ta'ala. Then after that we have الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى. So the word الذي is what type of word? ask about the Nahu of it, I'm asking what word is it?
Ismul Mawsul.
It's an Ismul Mawsul. For one person, I use Alladhi. For many people, I use what? Alladhina, for one female. Allati, and for many females,
Lati.
Allati or Allah-i. There's a third one also. The third one doesn't appear in the Quran, Allawati. But also there's three as well. Anyway, so Alladhi means is Ismul Mawsul. But in terms of grammar, what is the function here in terms of grammar? Because Alladhi is one of the words which is Mabni. Mabni means the word is fixed, the word is built, that you can't see a change. Whether it's in Rafun, it's Alladhi, Nasbun Alladhi, Jarbun Alladhi. So you can't see what's happening there. So how do you know what it is? Whether it's Raf, Nasbun, Jar, and why? Remember, is Alladhi is the Ism fi al Ism, it's Ismul Mawsul. So whenever you have an Ism, it must have a Hal. Most times you'll see the Hal, like Baytun, Baytan, Baytin. But in the Mabni word, you can't see the Hal, like Alladhi, Alladhi, Alladhi. Okay. So what's the Hal and why?
It's a Raf. Mubtada.
So we have Raf, we have Jar. This was Jar, Bismillah. What's the reason for Jar? Okay, we're giving the label. The Zakaria label. What's the label? Is it Fa'il, Mudaf ilayhi? What's the label? Why? So it's right to say, yes. Okay. Okay, so if you're unsure, where can you go check? Quran Hive. So you go to Quran Hive. I think I showed you this before many times, right? We used to give you those assignments for homework. I was speaking it back again. Those Quran assignments, I think you're just slipping down. So Alladhi, so you go to learn. You go to QuranHive.com. It's an app on your phone as well, very easy to see. You go to learn and you go to I'rab grammar. It will give you an explanation. So there's 1, 2, 3 words here. Alladhi khalaqa fasawwa. To tell you the explanation for Alladhi khalaqa and fasawwa. So when you read in Arabic, there's no vowels there, so it's a bit okay, there's no vowels there. But you should be able to work out something from that. So what do you work out from what it says there? Sad, fa'ata, you work out the word sifa. What's the next word there? What do you work out there?
Thaniya.
Thaniya. What does it mean? Second. And then? Oh, so what do you deduce from that? What's the first sifa? Sabbih isma rabbikal al-a'la was the first sifa. So what is telling you? Second sifa. So what was right? The jar was right. But the reason was sifa. Jar was right. The reason was sifa. Okay. So if you're confused, inshallah, if you're curious, it's a good resource to use. You'll find that you'll know most of the stuff. Not all of it, you'll know most of it. QuranHive.com. It's an app, it's a website. It's very nice, it's like easy, quick reference to the Quran. This is the next one, inshallah. This is the next one, Quran. Why are we here? Khalaqa, we can read the Bismillah. What's Maldi there?
Maldi.
What does Maldi mean? Past tense. What does this mean here? I don't know, worry how you read this thing, just tell me what it means.
Fa'ila mustatir, the fa'il is hidden.
The fa'il is mustatir. What does it mean?
The fa'il, the dua is hidden.
Where's hiding away? Inside.
It's inside.
Okay. Wal jumlatu silatun. What does it mean, jumla sila?
It's a connecting sentence.
What's a sila? Okay, linguistically,
You mean the Zamir Mawsul?
it comes basically after Ism Mawsul. Yes, Silatul Mawsul.
So,
And let's go there. Fasawwa, what does it say there? Ma'atufun ala khalaqa. Okay, so just revive the relationship with Quran have come and in a state of neglect. Okay, so let's go back to the ayah. Let's go to the side window. Okay, so here I have maybe I'll add some labels just to help you. So what I have here is I have a alladhi, which is a sifa. Okay, I'll put in English here because Arabic always the harakat disappear. That's going to be a sifa. When you have a sifa, you can't end with a sorry. So let me just say this is a sifa. I can't copy this. So when I say the sifa, remember the type of word is a sila al-mawsul, right? The type of word is a sila al-mawsul. Okay. So you understand the difference between the type of word and the grammar label. Alladhi is a sorry, that's the type of word. Okay, let's start from the beginning. So you understand the difference between the type of word. The type of word is ismu mawsul. Meaning what alladhi, that type of word ismu mawsul, they're telling you like huwa is a dhamir and hada is a ismu ishara. It's telling you the type of word. It's telling you basically it's a pronoun or it's a conjunctive noun or it's a demonstrative pronoun. It's telling you the type of word. So the ismu mawsul is the type of word. Ismu mawsul is the type of word. It is a ismu. And that type of word is a mabni type of word. The main three mabni words I want to remember is ismu mawsul, dhamir, and ismu ishara. Is processing ismu mawsul alladhi, alladhina, allati, allai, allawai, and allati. And then if you're thinking about a dhamir, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about attached and detached. Dhamir, huwa, hum, hiya, hunna, anta, antum, anti, antuna, ana, nahnu, and you think of all the attachments. And then you're thinking about a ismul ishara. Ishara is the point. هذا, هذه, ذلك, تلك, هؤلاء, أولئك. Those are the main three categories of that come all the time in the Quran in terms of those are all isms, but they're all mabni. You with me? I must add into the first of the inshallah. They're all isms and they're all mabni. I know you sound familiar, stay with it. Those words will always have a grammar label, but you can't see the had. Okay, so that grammar label is sifa, which means it is the second sifa actually. So sifa number 2. Sifa number 2. In consequence, okay, sifa number 2. So Allah is telling Prophet Sabbih, you Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you declare the perfection of the name of your Lord. That can end there. Sabbih isma rabbika. But then Allah wants to tell you a few things about Allah. So how many things does Allah want to tell you about himself? Al-A'la, number 1. Number 2, Alladhi khalaqa fasawwa, that's number 2. And then, Walladhi qaddara fahada, number 3. Walladhi akhraja al-mar'a, number 4. Faja'alahu ghuthan ahwa is calculated number 4. So there's basically 4 statements about Allah. 4 statements about Allah Ta'ala, but you read all those statements linked to Sabbih. It's just telling you who Rabb is. Who is your Lord, Rabb? Why is all this detail here? Because it's Makki Quran. Allah is explaining to people who Allah is. They're not sure who Allah is. They have confusion about it. Allah is going to explain to them who He is. So when you have a Ismul Mawsul, you do Ismul Mawsul Mawzakariya, probably not. So if you do Ismul Mawsul, it's not one of the grammar labels. First, yes. But whenever Ismul Mawsul, you must have something coming after it. In English, I can't say, did you see the one who? What are you waiting for? The one who? What? So which words here are describing Alladhi? Which words are completing Alladhi?
خلق هذا صلة الموصول.
Only khalaqa or what? We will say that this whole part here, respect this whole part here, is telling you, they lock this Quran PDF, so this is going to be a Silatul Mawsul. Yeah, in Arabic, it will come out Silatul al-Mawsul. So you find the Quran, they don't say Silatul Mawsul, they say Sila. Sila means the Silatul Mawsul, it means the completion of the alladhi. It can be anything. Why? Because alladhi, if I can say it in the ism word, I can say it in the description word. Did you give the book to the one who is told? To the store. Like using it in a verb way. Did you give the book to the one that went to the shop? And I can make it and I can make it anything after I'm describing that. So the whole Silatul Mawsul is almost like an independent sentence or phrase that is just there to complete the alladhi. No. Can be a word or can be a sentence. No. Can be? What? And we'll come inshallah. So that's going to be the Silatul Mawsul. Then when I look at the next two here, I have khalaqa and I have fasawwa. What does khalaqa mean? He created, fa, then sawwa, fashion, proportion, all of those things. So a fa is also a, what's the meaning of wa? And what does the meaning of fa? So fa and wa is considered both to be of conjunction. So this thing is joined to that. Are you with me? So in other words, there's one alladhi, but there's two things said about it. He created, then he fashioned proportion. Okay. To understand the grammatical construction, it's going to be the same for the next one. وَالَّذِي قَدَّرَ فَهَدَى. Okay, the same thing. This two is exactly the same structure. This one's a bit different. Okay, so let's go to the second one. Allah is telling the Prophet Sabbih isma rabbika al-a'la, declare the perfection of the name of your Lord. Number one, al-a'la, sifa number one, the one that is the most high. Alladhi, the one that khalaqa, he created. Now you get two types of verbs. One type of verb is transitive and the one is intransitive. Is this verb transitive or intransitive? I was thinking, what does transitive mean again? Transitive means it transfers onto an object. It is muta'addi in Arabic. Intransitive means it doesn't transfer onto an object. It is lazim. For example, transitive, he eat. I can't say assalamu alaikum, he eat. What? Who? What are you talking about? But if I say assalamu alaikum, he died. There's no transference onto an object. So is khalaqa transitive or intransitive? Transitive, because he created. But now when it's transitive, what do you expect to see? A maf'ulun bihi. When the maf'ul is removed, it is still transitive, but you have to read in the maf'ul. Because you have to read into the sentence. The maf'ul in your mind, you must read into the sentence. The mind of the reader or the mufassir, you must read into the sentence. So what do you think you're going to read into the sentence? Alladhi khalaqa man wa madha. What did he create? And then fasawwa. Okay. Okay. So let's say the first thing is that why does Allah not add something sometimes? It's because the reading is open-ended. Because the game can hold multiple interpretations. Most of the scholars will say that the khalaqa here refers to all creation. Some of the scholars say no, the khalaqa refers here to human beings. Why? Because they read the next verse, and the next verse is وَالَّذِي قَدَّرَ فَهَدَى. Because then they're going to have a debate, is hidayah only for human beings or for everything? And if it's for animals, do we call it hidayah? Is that the proper word for them? And you see that because there's some contextual indications there that's going to be confusing, because hidayah normally refers to making a right choice. It refers to guidance normally. So therefore it like kind of has more like a human being connotation, although you can stretch it to say that, okay, that also can refer to like natural instinct or something, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So can I see, so what happens is in the Quran, this often happens in the Quran because the ambiguity creates like multiple like interpretations and multiple opinions and so on. And also it creates breadth in the Quran because the one verse can encapsulate a number of meanings. As soon as the Quran doesn't have that, there's no like challenge anymore. You with me? The fact that we sit here every day, for years and years. For me, it's year number 11 here. It's like if there wasn't any ambiguity, like what we should discuss, it's okay, we'll finish. There's no discussion because it's just like it's all there. But now we discuss khalaqa, there's no maf'ul, why no maf'ul, therefore it's open-ended. What does open-ended mean? It means this, it means this, it means this, it doesn't mean that. You know what I mean? So it makes the Quran basically engaging to the reader. Also keep the reader on the back foot a little bit, so that they're always trying to understand. Now, so alladhi. So the second sifa of the Rabb, of the Lord, is the one who khalaqa, he created, according to most scholars' opinion, he created everything. We know he created everything, but we're saying, is that khalaqa referring to the creation of everything or to the creation of a specific genus of existence? You know what I mean? Like a specific species or something. So we know Allah, definitely Allah created everything, but is that referring to everything or not? So most scholars will say it refers to everything. Some scholars will say no, it refers to human beings specifically. Now, khalaqa means to you know what khalaqa means to create. And obviously Allah's creation is different because Allah's creation is you get two types of creations. You get creation that is ex nihilo, I think it's in Latin. It means creation out of non-existence. I don't know what unseen creation means. Unseen by us, yes. I don't unseen by all of us. No. But I'm saying you get one type of creation out of like nothing. It's like there's no precedence for the creation. There's no substance. There's no procedure. There's no sabbath that precedes. It just comes into being. And then there's a creation where there seems to be an apparent like process. So you think of yeah, so that's a different type of creation. But anyway, so that's the meaning of creation, either of everything, and that everything would include those that are just done by Amr, Kun, and it exists, or that which is done, it's also by Amr, but it seemingly has a preceding cause and a preceding substance, and so on. Fasawwa means what? Taswiya can mean, from the word sawa means equal. But what do you mean taswiya here? You can think of the physical form as being balanced and proportioned. But also fasawa also means the creation is appropriate for its requirements. Because otherwise someone might say, but look at this animals are balanced. Because maybe there's like 3 legs on the one side and 1 leg on the other side. Why is it not fasawa? Why is this crab looking so weird? No. Yeah, so in terms of creation, from our perspective, obviously Allah exists outside time, so it's very hard to speak from Allah's perspective because he exists outside time. But we would basically say that the creation is something which is happening continuously. The Ash'aris have like it's called in technical terms, it's called occasionalism. Occasionalism means that Allah is creating in every moment. Even as I am speaking these words, yes, it's out of my will, but the ability for the sound to emanate from my mouth is actually a creation of Allah happening now. And the ability for you to process these words is a creation happening now. And the ability for your heart to beat is a creation happening now from our perspective. From our perspective, it's happening now. Our perspective, there's no time and space. So it's very opposite our perspective. So that's one of the differences. I mean, it's like it's a very intense view. It's like an intense thought to think about Allah is creating all the time. Because what the Asharis do is that the Asharis remove. I mean, it's interesting, but just because something precedes something else doesn't mean that that thing causes it. Whether it happens a billion times. Just because I dropped this thing and that sound came. Then I know you should say that the battery is making that sound. The Asharis will say the drop of the battery is a creation of Allah Ta'ala. The sound is a creation of Allah Ta'ala. And Allah made it correlate at the same time. But just from a scientific point of view, it would be the most correct scientific thing to say that when I drop a battery, there is a correlation between the sound emitting. But for you to say that the battery causes the sound is an assumption. Because you can only observe the battery dropping. He's not feeling well today. He's actually today, so I have to just give you a bit of bonus. Yeah, that's the most common one, yes. But I like to see the props, you know. You teach children, you use the props. So when the sign can only just say, I see the drop, the battery dropping. I see the battery knocking the table. And every time I do it, I see the sound emit. Therefore, I am making the assertion that the drop of the battery is causing the sound. And I'm doing it a million times, and therefore I'm saying it. But that assertion can't be proven. Why is it not that an outside force can cause the sound at the moment that battery drops? Every single time. And that's especially the Ash'ari approach. It's occasionalism. It is continuous creation in every single moment with correlation. And there's a very big spiritual benefit. Is that the spiritual benefit is that you do the action, yes, but you know the result comes from Allah. You with me? The result comes from Allah. Because sometimes you might do something, you're like, yeah, Allah, I did this thing, I know it's not going to work, make it work. And then, like you do that for exams sometimes. At least study Allah, that you are the most knowledgeable. Oh, grasp knowledge, Ya Allah. You do it for exams. No. No, it should be at every level. Take a banana, Ya Allah, remove a pain. Even though you might correlate banana removing headache 1,000 times, we don't assert it. We don't assert that the one causes the other in an absolutely true way. We say in a normative, in a norm, in terms of human norm, empirical study, yes, there's causation, but not in terms of an aqidah level. Alternatively, is that thing causes the sound. So this thing has qudra, has power. And then basically Allah is removed from the equation. Yeah. There isn't an external third party into that production. So the external party is removed from interacting with that moment. It's like a type of an aqidah that some faiths have. That Allah creates a system, Allah leaves a system, and almost like Allah creates a machine. And I press on. Okay. Maybe watch the thing go. Because then I create this machine, the machine runs. So we don't believe that. We all create the machine, and Allah also runs the machine all the time. He created the machine, he created the rules, he pressed on, and made the machine run. And while making the machine run, he's making the rules be implemented in every single moment, every single case. Which is like, no. This is why we must have separate subjects in Mizan, so we can deal with Aqidah in the Aqidah class, because now it pops up here in this class. No. Yeah, you must assume. That's Sunnah Allah. Yeah, so when Allah made the Sunnah of something, is that, yeah. And all magic is, or miracle is to remove the link, or to substitute the link. For example, if I drop this here and became a rabbit once only, that is magic. You with me? Because now all that magic or miracle is to break a normal relationship. Okay, anyway. No, but I'm saying science, if you're authentic to the scientific method, all science can say is I observe a drop, and I observe a sound, and I observe a correlation in every single moment. It's almost like this example I remember reading when I was at university a long time ago, is that there's two clocks in a certain time. There's two clocks. The one clock is about 30 seconds slower than the other clock. So for your whole life, you hear the one clock go off, and then you hear the other clock go off. Can you say the one clock goes, other clock goes off? I'm saying if you had an assumption, then I'm saying if you had the assumption that correlation implies causation, I'll say it again, that correlation implies causation, then you will say clock A is making clock B go. Because 1,000 times I heard that clock one go and other go, they must be causation. So that's the two clocks, but that clock obviously we know it. It's not like that because it's obvious to us. So why is it not obvious to us when this thing drops? That sound is actually not causation, it's correlation. And the causation is Allah. In every single moment, the causation is Allah. Okay? You process it. You can see how the brother has you. I know I've been a believer my whole life. What's happening? But there's a great spiritual benefit. The spiritual benefit is the belief that Allah Ta'ala is in control of everything in every single moment. But there's lots of complications with regard to all this discussion, which we will need. But I think that I don't know anything about quantum physics, but we should read about it. No, I think in quantum physics there's a lot of challenges to the idea of the causation. I don't know anything about it. That's all I know about it, is that in quantum physics there's a lot of challenges to the idea of this kind of cause and effect. Does anybody know about it? Yeah? No, we should read about it, inshallah. No, but sometimes we must speak right stuff. There was a speak answers. You might get a guest speaker who's an alim also, or at least not really speaking about it. Otherwise, cause more confusion. No. Malta was a nominee. Malta would like read a few books on quantum physics and speak about it like the authority. And he's like weird like that. He like reads up and he will speak to authority like in front of like scientific people. He has the ability to process a lot of information with complete recall in a short amount of time and speak about it like with authority. But at the end of his life, he did speak about quantum physics being closer to the Aqidah of the Sharia. In terms of how, like, as we discover the breakages, like, because it's very rudimentary to say the one causes the other thing. It's like a rudimentary kind of approach. So I'm saying scientifically, the most sound thing is to say it's correlated. Like, if you're proper now, pure scientific method, all you can say is that it's correlated. And it always correlates. And something like that. And that's where you can scientifically end. Because how can you say anything else? No. Alladhi, the one that khalaqa, he created. So that was Brother Kashif taking us there down the wrong. Anyway, he created fasawwa. So fasawwa, yes, can mean in terms of physical proportion, yes. But fasawwa can also mean in terms of there is a proportion between the build and the purpose. There's a proportion between the build of Allah's creation and the purpose it is there to to fulfill. What do you call it again now? The fancy word for these things? Discuss me, inshallah. No. Proper fit for purpose. No, it's a fancy word for these things. I think it's to do with. We'll come to it, inshallah. Walladhi, and the one that qaddara, the qadr of something is actually the measure of something. The qadr of something is the measure of something. When you measure something out in terms of humans, what do we normally do? We can measure the number of something. There's 5 of this thing. Or you can measure the length of the sun. The thing is so long. Or you can measure the mass of something. If there's so many kilograms. Or you can measure the capacity of something. If it's so many liters. So originally the word qadr comes from the word measure. And you can measure something, as I mentioned, in 4 different, or maybe even more ways, in 4 different ways. So the idea is that all of those things, those measures, have already been decreed. That's the meaning of qaddara, is that everything has been measured out beforehand. Alladhi, the one that qaddara has already measured everything out, has ordained the measure of everything. Your wealth, your life, everything has been ordained. Again, you're going to see there what the maf'ul is missing. The maf'ul is missing. Fahada, then hada, he guided. And here is a lot of other ikhtilaf comes, because generally when you speak about guidance, you speak about choice, and a choice to the right path. So that generally only refers to human beings, maybe to jinn as well. But if you take it and you stretch the meaning to something which is like a secondary meaning, it can also mean like the instincts of animals to procreate, to eat, and so on. That could be their form of guidance. Or some scholars say, no, because of hada is there, this verse is only speaking about human beings, so that ikhtilaf is going to exist. Walladhi, and the one that, so this is now, so now Allah spoke about 3 things about himself now. He's a'la, he's transcendent. Number 2, he creates, and he creates things which are, just to look up the word, teleological. No. He creates and he makes them fit for that purpose. And then so you can see the process. He's transcendent, he creates everything and he fits it for the purpose. And then does he leave it? He leaves it, yes. So what does he do? He's already measured out everything is going to happen to that being. But does he measure out and force that being to do it? Hada. He still leaves that being with free will. Because hada means to choose. So if you think about those few verses, those few verses are almost like all of creation. There is the theological. Yeah, so teleological arguments are basically teleological. Teleological? No. Theological arguments are basically arguments that say that, it's like one of the arguments is saying that because things are designed for a specific purpose, therefore it is the evidence of someone who is supreme to that thing, to create it for that purpose. Is the idea of almost like, how is everything so specialized in its creation to fit the purpose? There must be someone who is super special, who's above that speciality. What are the arguments for the existence of Allah? So that's so what is also the teleological teleology. No, anyway. That was like a simple answer. Thank you. Yeah, doctrine of design and purpose. There's also one of the arguments for, there's many arguments, cosmological, theological arguments for existence of God and so on. So the first will indicate towards teleological arguments. وَالَّذِي قَدَّرَ فَهَدَى. So if you think about these verses, it's actually beautiful because the verse is speaking about the fact that the creation emanates from Allah Ta'ala. Then fasawa, the purpose and design of creation is done by Allah Ta'ala. There's refinement and there is like a fit for purpose in the creation. Then the qadr, the future of all of those creations is already moved out. It's already measured out. Everything is known, there's nothing unknown, it's already all decreed. However, that creation is not forced, therefore it is hada. Hada meaning what? It is giving a choice and therefore it is able, but also given guidance. It's given a choice, but also given guidance. And that guidance part is going to be important, right? Because the end of us in the end of the Quran. Walladhi, and the one that akhraja mar'a. So those are the first three. I think just from a methodological point of view is that I think at Mizan, what we're trying to do is trying to force your mind to think about the why. Not about the what Allah is saying only, because Allah is like an easy thing to pick up the Quran. I haven't opened 10 translations and say, okay, creator and force. And okay, that's like superficial reading. Allah says, Quran. Do not look beyond the surface level of the Quran. The Quran is actually urging you to think all the time. So the reason we spend so much time on all of this is that we want to urge ourselves and our students to think about the why. Like why say khalaqa fasawwa? Why say qaddara fahada? Why say walladhi akhraja al-mar'a faj'alahu ghutha'an ahwa? So the discussion is important, and it's not always just like, let's call it tafsir discussion. Tafsir discussions are sometimes like very limited to narrations. It's like discussions actually about some obviously discussions with tafsir will be about the why, but sometimes that discussion has to happen even outside tafsir. There has to be your own tadabbur, your own thinking about why, as separate from the. So anyway, that last one I said now is my own stuff. But I also have to clarify to you what comes from tafsir, what comes from my own stuff. So the whole thing about why khalaqa, why fasawa, why qadra, why hada is my own deductions. It's not tafsir proper in terms of like I can say this imam said it or so on. It's just like reflection. So I'm just giving you. But in class, I always try to separate. I say this is my own reflection versus this is like the tafsir is that some people say it's all creation, some people say it's only humans. It's tafsir reflection point. And then I'll give a personal reflection in terms of that's theological, that is that, and that's the own discussion point. But the point I want to make is that you have to do that same thing every time. You must force your mind and not say, I'm not a scholar, I don't know. That's not good enough. The command for tadabbur is not for scholars. It's for everybody. Even if you don't understand Arabic, you must think about the English. The requirement for tadabbur is for everybody to think and apply. Why did Allah say this to me? What does it mean? What does it mean to me? What does it mean in my life? How do I understand this? If you're confused, you can consult the scholars. But the idea is that you must apply your mind. So when I prepare for class, I always try to apply my mind to the why. Like all of this is coming down to what? Sanuqri'uka fala tansa. All of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ayat. All the 5 ayat are actually only describing it. الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى. He's simply describing Allah. But Allah wants to come to the point. Is what? سبح اسم ربك الأعلى سنقرئك فلا تنسى. You with me? That is actually the link where it's going to. The whole link of this is سنقرئك from the fourth bab أقرأ يقرئ يقرئ. We will cause you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to recite the Quran. فَلَا تَنْسَى, and you will not forget it. You will guarantee its remembrance. So if you know that is the destination of the ayat, you must think to why is this happening in these ayat, because it's going to be linked to the destination. Otherwise, you read the Quran atomistically at verse by verse and line by line without thinking about the bigger picture. Yeah. But to be honest, like half the stuff I just covered just in class. the reflection is just coming in class, because I think that's like the focus where you're engaging with the students, who's asking you why about this, and learning actually is about conversation. There's one part which is study, but there's one part about conversation. Discussion, ask me, okay, this, ask me this, and then the conversation is actually where learning takes place. Because learning is often the taking of two things you know to produce a third thing you didn't know. It's the rearrangement of knowledge so that 1 plus 1 becomes 3. Not in a Trinitarian sense. Right? No, it's always going to be correlation. Because our key is Allah is the one who teaches it. But the process is what? Taking things that you know, interacting, engaging, discussing, and you produce something that you didn't see before. You didn't see it before, and that is what the process of learning is. So my appeal to you is don't come to the Quran as like a passenger. Okay, because really I can recover this verse in about 4 minutes, the whole surah, so we can be finished. And you could even learn to do it in 4 minutes yourself. But that wouldn't be the point. The point would be that the Quran is actually speaking to you and you're engaging with the Quran at a deep level. And the reason I would tell us to read the Quran every single day in Salah, all the time. It's the same word every time. I wouldn't say it every time. Because there's always engagement in the meaning, and that engagement is different times of your life. So when you're preparing for class, when you're revising for class, always make sure that you are engaging in the why. Why do Allah say it? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for me in my world? And then Allah, inshallah, Allah open doors for understanding. Allah forgive us for any shortcomings. But that is the approach, inshallah. And we'll give you the basic tafsir approach in terms of scholars say this, scholars say that, which is fine. But just to go beyond that into action. It's like active engagement. And I think that, let me end this, inshallah, is that Islam never envisaged a society where ulama are the gatekeepers of knowledge. What do I mean by gatekeepers of knowledge? Like, in some parts of South Africa, they used to prevent people from reading the translation of Quran. But now, historically, if you go back 50, 60 years, some parts of South Africa, they used to discourage people from reading the translation of the Quran. Because you mustn't know what this thing means. We will tell you what you need to know. So that's like a very like let's call it like the clergy kind of setup, like the gatekeepers, and you don't know anything, we'll tell you what you need to know. Islam was never ever like that. No one like says that Abu Bakr was like a Sheikh Mufti Abu Bakr, and no one could say anything. But did you ask Abu Bakr? No. In the fact, even you think about the way when we say a Sahaba's name, the mind of like a religious figure does come to mind. Abu Bakr, when I mean religious, I mean like, you don't think of like a bishop with a special uniform, and then like he comes and he blesses the people, and he says, let me tell you the truth, and he moves away into like the unseen again and comes back. You think of very human people. You think of human people who have families, who live, who fight in jihad, who have generosities, who have difficulties, who have kids, who have... You think about a holistic person. And you think about their engagement is a very organic engagement with knowledge. They're learning and they're teaching like very organically. They were definitely ulama of Sahaba. But it didn't mean the society wasn't learning. And they were learning in a very engaged way. They would come up, what does it mean? What does it mean? They want to know, they want to engage. So in terms of our understanding is that is that Islam is all about active learners. Active learning is considered to be ilm. And active learners learn from people who have been active a bit longer than them. And that's all it is. It's just people on the same journey at different parts of the journey. That's not like a special class of people who just like, no. I mean, one of the reasons I dress the way I do in normal civilian clothes. I wear civilian clothes. My civilian gear is precisely to try to convey the message that this is not about a class of people and another class of people who come and listen. No, this is a journey that we walk together. And that active engagement is required from me and it's required from you as well. As I have to prepare for class, you have to prepare for class. Because I have to think about why, you have to think about why. So that is the discussion. Because otherwise, if you're just waiting for like passive reciprocity, what's the point? Like I remember my teacher said, like, he told me, you know, my very first year of being a student, he said, like, I'm here to teach you, so you don't hear from us anymore. Like, meaning what? Like, I want to make you able to gain knowledge on your own, independently. You see, if you're going to ask after 5 years, I'll go home and make a question from you, ask me. Don't come study. Like, live your life if you want to be like that. When you have a question from you, ask me, go back home again. But you're learning how to learn also. You're learning how to, that's why I tell you, Quran, go check it there, go check it tafsir. You must become active engagers in knowledge. It's not something which is reserved for knowledge. Okay, so now ulama will guide and will help and so on, but the responsibility to acquire knowledge is due upon. Always quote hadith, what's it? Al-ilmu, what's it? Can you read that one? Ala kulli Muslim wa Muslimatin, declaration. Anyway, a number of hadith about knowledge, but the point is just more about the attitude. And our teacher, Mawta Rahimahullah, was about the idea that I am not here to give you positions. I am here to teach you how to learn. And his very final lesson with us before he passed away, Rahimahullah, he said to us clearly, it's okay if you and I differ. Me as a teacher, you as students. As long as we are basing our things on a similar framework, it's okay to come to different conclusions. I'm not here to enforce my conclusion upon you. And so that's the same attitude we have here. Is that you must study, you must read, you must learn, you must be actively engaged in the why and think about this and bring up that. That's important. That's important thing to. No, like it would upset multi-basic graduation. Like the sunnah is that like I don't have a certificate from where I came from because they wouldn't put issue it. It's like no ceremony. There's literally like no. You know our ceremony when you finish. I mean, like some of the people came like I feel sorry that they came from overseas, like Malaysia and from parts of Africa. Their family sacrificed. They moved here, and then when they're going to graduate, the family would be like a big. You give them turbans and jubbas. I mean, we didn't even have an assembly. There was not even like assembly in the madrasa to say, mashallah, they graduated. All we had were British teachers at some of the house, and they made to Abu and they left. And I still don't have a certificate. Also, because they don't give you one. It's not like the certificate I'm talking about. So Malta used to say that you mustn't say the year you graduated, you say the year you left the madrasa. I will say like the year I left was I think 2012. I also the year I graduated. What was graduate? What do you mean graduate? You left and you left to continue your journey on your own basically. Now you're able to study and to learn. The point being is that become an active participant in the seeking of knowledge. Become an active participant in the seeking of knowledge, which means what? Go read and go seek. Like for us, when we were students, it would be considered to be like the reason I never ask multiple questions is because it could be considered to me to be like a shortcoming to ask the question of other researching yourself. So imagine that for you must be a shortcoming. So what do you find in the dictionary? But that should be like the way it is, like like I checked this, but you know what I mean? Like almost like that the fact that you checked it means that I want to know. The fact that you ask me what was this, like okay, it's like am I really serious? But I'm saying okay, you're part-time students, take it easy if you don't come back, no problem. But I'm just saying in terms of a true student, someone who engages and tries to say what's happening. So with our teachers, for example, we've been like embarrassment for me to ask my teacher a question. But we were obviously full-time students, different situation. But it would be an embarrassment for me to ask a question if I didn't read up. Because you look at me like, so what did you read? What did you find? Like, why are you here? You know what I mean? Like, why are you here? What did you find out yourself? You can come ask once you want clarity. I'm not here to put pressure on you. I'm just saying I'm trying to enliven the mind of the student to become an active participant in this, not to wait for a teacher to give you like the wahi. The wahi is finished. You one mail is finished. It's all finished. The wahi is finished now. It's just the process of active engagement in ilm, and scholars are there to guide that engagement. We're there to guide that engagement. So Allah bless and Allah protect and Allah guide us all. Sorry, I planned many more verses, but we'll carry on next week, inshallah.
Just the sifa, in Juz Amma, you always get that this, like this, in this, it's almost like it's paired. And for me, when I look at it, it's almost paired like with the physical and the metaphysical. It's like, or the spiritual. So it's almost like there's a creation, Allah has created, and then there's a proportion, which is the purpose. And then there's the measurement, or the decree, which is your book, and what, and then there's the guidance, where there is choice. There's almost these pairings that gives you, that you can picture the physical creation, something physical, and then after that it becomes almost like spiritual.
Yeah. So if someone sees a phenomenon like that, what the person should do is then read the surahs with that lens to see how frequently the phenomena reoccurs. Because what happens is when you say something like we're asserting a theory, and when you assert the theory, then you must test the theory through empirical evidence. And if that holds true, then you say that is a pattern in the Quran. Like for example, if I say a theory like the end casing changes with the theme, then I must say, okay, see, it happens there, it happens there, it happens there, it happens. It's happening all the time. Like I say, that is a design of the Quran. So that will be the homework, inshallah, is to come up with examples where that theory is basically proven and tested, inshallah. Barakallahu, bless and protect. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.